Welcome to Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica, where no topics are taboo or off limits. Join us as we let loose and discuss the real, raw feelings about parenting.
In each episode, we will bring you heartfelt discussions, real-life stories, and special guests that will both entertain you and encourage community so no one feels alone in their parenting journey.
Thanks so much for listening. Now let's start the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our latest episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed. Today, Carrie and I have a special guest with us. My own personal kids have dubbed her the kindest person in Parkland. She wears so many hats. She sits on the board of S.O.S Children's Village. She is the president of the football booster club at our local high school. She is a substitute teacher. Her husband, the mayor of Parkland, is lucky enough to be married to her. And probably her most important and her favorite hat that she wears is being the mom of 5 children. So
I'm
please,
exhausted.
I know, right? Please welcome to our show, Catherine Walker.
Hi
Hi.
there. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
So just right off the bat, did you always want a large family?
I did. I was thinking about that and how, playing when I was growing up with baby dolls, I had 5 Cabbage Patch Kids. I had to have like the most of everything. I loved having just a big gaggle. I'm not sure where it came from. I grew up with one brother. We're 6 years apart, but I grew up with a close knit of cousins. So I really wanted my house to be that hustle and bustle. And to me, that was the ideal scenario. Rich grew up with 3, and he was okay with 3. That was kind of his goal. I can be a little more persuasive, but we had 2 girls first, and I was fortunate enough, we had Scott, and Rich was like, "Oh, we're good. I got my boy." I'm like, "Well, he needs a brother." Not that I had any control over that, but then I thought he needs one more brother. So it just worked out. I'm not sure how, but it just did. So
Well, it was your tiebreaker, right?
it was 100%. That's how we announced him as a tiebreaker. It's perfect.
That's awesome. So was Rich on board with the 5, or was he like, enough already? Or
So if this may be TMI, but since it seems like this is the forum for this, I will tell you that, we have 5, and, this will go into your question about like the commentary that people make, do you know how this happens? Blah, blah, blah. If I had met you 25 years ago, you would have known like our story was interesting. We tried really hard to have a family. I had 2 miscarriages before Delaney and then I was discovered that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome. So we went through infertility treatments for the girls to avoid further miscarriage. It was my egg quality. And it was crazy because we had Delaney, then we went back and we kind of knew what the route was going to be this time. So it was like, okay, we're going to go through the same route. We're going to go back to the same doctors with both of the girls. It was, 2 years apart. And then of course we decided we wanted a third, and the burden on Rich's shoulder was always, he wanted his boy. That's just not that he didn't love his girls, but like Jessica knows Rich. He's a guy's guy, and he wanted someone to toss the football around with and do all that. And we went back for the third, and they said to us, ironically, back in the day, I mean, this was in 2007. Do you want to play God? Do you want to have a boy? And we were like, no, not at all. We want to have a healthy baby, And ironically, I ended up having Scott we ended up getting pregnant with Scott on our own. So we joke about how the girls are store-bought and the boys are homemade.
Or if you would have made the choice, no, I want to play God, right?
No,
it was a definite
no.
Was that how things would have changed?
It was it's crazy. It was just just how we got here, I mean, it looks like we're just this happy, jovial family of 5, but it was an interesting road to get here. And I think that makes me appreciate it even more, that in the chaos and the madness of it all, it's the journey was just a little like sidetracked, and it worked out beautifully in the end. Couldn't have planned it.
Did you have a beautiful family?
Thank you.
Tell us, what are their ages?
Okay, so Delaney just turned 21. She is a junior at the University of Delaware. She is our oldest. Steffi James is 18. She'll be 19 on the 30th of January. She is a freshman at UCF. Scott is a junior at Douglas. He is 16 years old. Drake is 14. He is a freshman at Douglas. He is very young for his grade. He'll be 15 after school finishes up,
Oh, wow.
which leads me to Hayes, who is 3.5 years younger than Drake. He's 10, but he's in fifth grade. So right now we're in an interesting dynamic where we have a fifth grader, two high schoolers, and two college kids. And it seems like it's a far stretch. It never really felt like this before, but now we've arrived at a different stage. And I find that the evolution of their age is changing. This is a very unique one this year. Very different. So, but
I would think there's a big gap. It seems to be like the gap is bigger, even though you never thought of it as that large, just because of the schools and their stages.
exactly. Yeah, because you think grammar school, which I love, and I told Jessica I'm a little sad, but we're in the midst of planning the fifth grade celebration for my last walker there. But it's weird because I look back and I think 3.5 years is not that much a difference between the last two. But when you look at it, grade wise, it's huge right now. So that's the long story of that is your answer. And their age.
Is it bittersweet? Is there any kind of sweetness, like looking at getting out of the elementary school? Or do you want to hang on for as long as you can?
It's definitely bittersweet. Today I was on a field trip with the fifth grade, and it was sad. It's always been, okay, I'm going to do this again. Okay, I get to do this. I get to have one more chance at this, and I get to watch the next one do this. I'm excited for him. I'm learning to embrace as each of them heads to a different level of where they need to be. He's excited, which always makes life easier when your child is excited to get to them. It is sad though. That's when I feel like they're really little. I mean, middle school's a whole different ballgame, and probably one of the toughest ball games, I think, of all of the ages, to be honest.
So is it getting easier now that the fifth is going to make the transition to middle school, or no, it feels exactly the same as when the oldest?
Just the dynamic of him going, or do you mean the dynamic of just life?
The dynamic of him, the transition to middle school.
Oh, no, I think it's way easier. I mean, I know what to expect. He knows what to expect. He has friends there already. It's almost like, okay, it's his turn at the bat, It's sort of just with the first one you have apprehensions, and then each one subsequently it's just okay, it's your turn, which is how everything sort of coincides with our family, it seems like.
That's an interesting question, though, Carrie. With having 5 kids, are there certain life transitions that got more difficult as the kids got older? Or do you feel that everything got easier the further on down your kids went?
Right.
Or, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to explain this properly. Because we had 2 girls and then we had 3 boys, I kind of batched them. I know it sounds kind of interesting when you talk about like birth order, but for me, it's more like the girls and the boys. The girls, the boys, the baby. It's always been, but now it's like the girls and the boys. And I will say that it's not easier, but it's different with the boys. And it's just different. There's a little less independence. There requires a little more overseeing. I felt like I had it really, really easy with the girls. The boys, of course, they just come with different challenges in terms of micromanaging. And, often a lot of things are new for me with my third because he's my first boy, if that makes any sense.
Like what?
Registering.
Can you give us an example? Or
Oh, for sure. Scott going to get his driver's license, register for that. My girls did that all themselves, registered themselves, set themselves up. I was hands off. And it sounds almost neglectful, but keep in mind at the time there were a bunch of other littles that I was
Sure.
tending to. And my girls have always been very independent. So, I've directed him, well, ask your sisters what they did, that have them give you the guidance, not let me do this for you. A recent one, which is kind of amusing, is there were SATs in December. And the night before, 2 days before, Scott said, okay, so I'm taking the SATs on whatever day. And I said, oh, did you register yourself? Because I didn't register you. We never talked. He said, well, I just assumed you did. And I said, no, I didn't, because I never did that. That's just how, it is. There is a method to the madness, especially with a bunch of them. You kind of have to, you do have to, fend for yourself a little bit. But I also love that it fosters that independence. But it seems like I'm doing a little bit more of that now, which is fine. I have more time to do it. But like I make the boys sandwiches. The girls die when they come home from college and they're like, you're making them sandwiches.
Right, they're like judging you
Yes!
for what you're doing.
Yes. They're like, "You never did this for us." And I'm like, "Well, because I was nursing a baby and then this one had to get here and there." So, no, I couldn't, but now I can, if that makes so
Yeah.
it evolves. It's a weird scenario. That makes sense.
So does it feel different? I'm sure it's different with two less in the house, but being that they were your daughter and more self-sufficient, but did they help out with the younger boy? Or did you lose that and now you've lost it twice? Like, how does that feel?
So Jessica's laughing because our oldest one, Delaney, Lonnie affectionately refers to Delaney as Cinderella. She literally took it upon her. I mean, it's her personality. She's the firstborn. She loves to be in charge. She loves to be the boss. I mean, she has always been, I'm going to do this. And, when she's around, she just takes charge. I mean, it's almost like that's just her personality. And it's her personality in the house. It's her personality, at school or in a job. So she's very, very helpful, sometimes to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm the mom. So let's just remember where we are. And then Steffi James is more of an independent, quiet speaker. I think what I miss more, honestly, and what's different is their companionship. It's a different level of companionship than the boys. And now I've got a pretty good gig right now. It's pretty quiet and easy, and I'm gonna knock on wood with that. But this year took a big, definite pause for me with both girls gone. 2 boys in high school. They're gone from 7 to 7. They drive to school together. I just have the baby and he rides on his it's gotten easier even with 2 girls gone. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's just easier, less load.
It is funny to hear you say that your house is quiet with 3 boys.
Right. Well, right now it's quiet because they're not home. Yeah.
Right.
Right? 'Cause some people, right, that's all they have is 3 or 3 boys or 3 the same, gender, and it's loud, right?
I know.
That's a lot.
No,
And I only have 2, so thinking of 3 and I have 2 boys, thinking of 3, wow.
So, and I guess my perspective of quiet is definitely different, So, yeah, for sure, 100%. It's quieter. It's slowed down a lot. It's definitely this is the year that's been a little definitely different for sure.
And does that make you happy or does that make you sad that slowness or calmness has happened, right? Because you've been used to a different pace.
I'm trying to figure that out, to be honest. I'm learning to fill my time with trying to do more for me, trying to do more for, obviously, as Jessica mentioned, I have a lot of volunteer opportunities. So I've always had them, but now I can really dedicate myself to more and more for me. And so I go back and forth, sometimes it's a little sad. You're like, oh God, and my husband's very busy too. So sometimes it could be like a Friday night. And I saw this meme not too long ago that made me think of where I am, and I'm sure you guys feel this way, is there was a moment in your life when you really you wanted just 5 minutes of peace or quiet,
Yep.
or you just couldn't wait for them to go to bed, or
Or you hid in the bathroom?
Yes.
I don't know what happened in your homes, but they found me in the bathroom, always.
Right, right, right. So I'm not sure. I probably could answer that question better another time. I'm learning. I'm at a very unique stage right now, I think.
Do you find that there's something Carrie and I were talking about earlier? I know when I said goodbye to Avery this winter break when she went back to school, it felt like, oh my gosh, this might be the last time she's home for such an extended period. And then Karen and I were talking about empty nesting, and it feels like I have one foot in one direction and one foot in the other direction.
Right.
Do you feel that with two gone, or are you still just so focused on raising the 3 boys that you don't see that as coming up anytime soon?
I don't it's funny you say that because I think you guys asked me or had suggested a conversation about the house and what we would do when we were empty nesters. And for Rich and I, it's so far away because Hayes is 10 that I can't even it never comes up. And I do think about, if Drake were my youngest, we would be thinking about that. We would be thinking, but I feel like, hey, I think that's part of the mourning process of him leaving elementary school because we know that will speed right up come middle school. It's like zip, zip, you're done. And I feel like this has been a nice little slow jog and it's just going to turn into a sprint. I don't think we're there yet. I feel fortunate that we're not there yet because it does make me a little sad, you know?
Yeah.
Come
I
on.
know when people bring up like, "Oh, you're gonna be empty nester soon," because
Right.
Jackson is also a junior in high school, and I tell them, "No, I'm not ready to talk
No,
about it yet."
no,
And
no.
we have friends that are both, like, a lot of our friends are empty nesters, and they're, ready and to do all these amazing fun things and trips and stuff, and I feel like sometimes I have to remind Lonnie that we still have a child. We still have someone at
Right.
home.
He's sprinting there. He's trying to
Yeah.
get there quickly.
Yeah. I feel like men have a different perspective. I think it's that whole maternal instinct. Rich definitely, for him, he was always happy when one was maybe like potty trained and then the next one was, for him it was always like, "Okay, check that off." And I was like,
Yeah, because we feel like they start needing us less.
"Yes,
And
a
that's an
100%."
adjustment, I believe, as a mom that we go through that. I mean, I've never been dad, I don't know, but I don't know that they go through that the same way or
Right.
feel that in the same way.
I think you're right. It's different. It's definitely a different perspective, for sure.
All right. So I'm dying to ask this question
Yes.
about so you have a large family, you have a lot of kids, you're out in the community.
Oh, yeah.
What have been
Oh my god.
the comments? Like, does anything stand out to you when people have been judgmental or said things that you overheard about how you're managing all these kids, whether it was a really positive, like, wow, I cannot, kudos to her, or something, kind of negative and hurtful about having a large family or how you guys are managing it?
Okay. Yeah, this is a good one. And when I befriend someone else that has a larger, I have a few friends that I've connected with over the years, usually people even think it's sort of like, "Hey, I have a friend that has 5 kids. Do you want to meet them because you guys are
It's a flow.
and it's you do have the same talking points, but I mean, it doesn't mean we're instantly connected. But when they were younger and I would have them all out all the time, that's when it was more prevalent. I mean, you would have the baby bassinet, you'd be carrying one, and then two would be hanging. I mean, and they always came with me because they were. I mean, the first 4 were in 6.5 years, so they were always with me, and then the baby came along, but even then, Delaney was 10, so really it was just they were always with me. And, back then, there was a lot of, "Oh, do you know how that happens? Do you have a television in the house? Do Are they all from the same dad? Are they all yours?" I mean, I could go on, and you can never say anything, A, because it's rude, but B, your kids are there. So you never want to turn around and say, in my mind, I would, later, it would go through my brain and I would think, "Oh gosh, I could have said this. I could have said this." Da, da, da."
They all have different dads.
Yeah, right. Be like, "Hey, I missed."
I don't know who their dad is.
I mean, there was always a lot of that, and it just, and I never wanted to say anything, but I do find that people would say more negative things than positive. Another thing I got a lot was people that maybe didn't know I had 5 kids, and then they would find out and say, "Wow, you don't seem like you would have 5 kids." I'm like, "Well, what does that mean? Like, what does someone that would have 5 kids be like? Like, what is the category? What is the description?"
I don't know. Maybe they thought you'd be running out in your pajamas,
I
night
don't
wrap on half your face from the night before,
know.
1 shoe off left behind, I don't, or like half naked children. I don't
Right.
know, but
Right. And that very well could be. I mean, be honest with you, there's definitely times when especially the boys, there was a lot of that. There was, it's comical, it's interesting, it's eye-catching. I can't I feel like our family has always just sort of been, no matter what, just noticed because it's large. You go to dinner and we're large. I mean, now that if we go out, all of us all the time, we're automatically surcharged that 7-person automatic
Oh,
tip.
the gratuity had it.
large,
Because we
large
right?
party.
Yeah, like some restaurants, I have to call and make a reservation because Open Table just takes 6. I mean, like little things like that. Now, as they're bigger, it's interesting.
What are vacations like for you guys?
The vacations are evolving also, I'm gonna tell you, but the one consistent vacation we love to take is we rent a house, which is most manageable for us.
Sure, yeah.
Hotels, we've outgrown hotels at this point, 2 or 3 rooms, really. I mean, they're men and women versus a little guy. one of our favorite vacations is we do a week down the shore in New Jersey, and we connect with all of our friends that we basically had began raising and are still friends with from New Jersey, the first house we lived in our neighborhood that we lived in before we moved here. So that's a great reconnection. It's becoming tougher to have vacations between multiple spring breaks. We're now on 3 spring breaks this year. Boys with football, sports is king in my house, especially with the guys, and it's tough. We do a lot of vacations individually. We have to do sometimes, where we take batches of them because I started that a few years ago when I realized, with Hayes, I was always gallivanting with him because he was the baby and he wasn't in school. But, like Rich and I took Delaney to Epcot for her 21st birthday. And he's like, well, we're going to Disney. We should take the little kids. And I thought, no, this is just her time.
Yeah.
Let's make a new tradition.
That's awesome. I mean,
Thank you.
there's something to be said about that, about having one-on-one time with your children when you have such a large family. It makes them all be seen and heard, and I think that's great.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It's enjoyable. It's definitely, I took the big 3, we call them. They call themselves, they have a group chat, Delaney, Steffi, James, and Scott, and they call themselves the big 3, which I love. And I took just them up to New Jersey. We flew for a couple days, and just to travel with them I just took a nap and I read my book, and no one needed me to take them to the bathroom or, I mean, it was really, it's different. Everything's evolving. I think we're definitely in like a stage of change right now. A good change, I think. I mean, it has to be. It's happening.
Right. You have no choice but to go with it.
We might as well, embrace it.
Might as well embrace it. Yeah.
I don't know if you ever have this conversation, but do you ever talk about with your kids if they want to have big families? Do you think that their childhood has shaped what they would like their families to look like?
Okay. So that's something they definitely all talk about. Delaney definitely does not, at this point, want to have children. She's the oldest.
Huh.
She feels, I mean, she's also done a lot of babysitting. She helps, that was one of her jobs for a long time. So I think I think that'll change, but right now I'm not having any. Steffi James would like to have a few, but in her brain, it's like 2 or 3. And then my boys just want a whole
They're on a team.
So they need to have football games with each other.
Right. And I think Hayes, a friend of mine always tells me when he's over at her house, they talk, she'll overhear the boys talking, and Hayes has talked about wanting 15 kids. He's just, but think of his life. It's like probably so fun to be the baby and do it. So
Sure.
they're all different. And I think that birth order has a lot to do with it for sure.
I would agree with you.
Do they do they even notice, like, because this is just their norm? Like, I
Right.
think, do they even notice, right? Like that other families would too, things are different in their house than at their home or their vacation, right? Or it's just so normal. And the way kids look at things is not the way us as adults see things. Like,
Right.
do you think that they see a difference? Like, are they, when they go to friends or?
I think as they've gotten older, it's been more noticeable. And it's interesting when they have friends, like Steffi James has a best friend who's an only. And she'll always compare, when they were looking at colleges and, she was like, well, she's an only, so she can do whatever she wants. Da, da, da. And which is, a perspective from a teenage girl. But they'll comment a little bit, but I also see a difference in like the boys. The boys always want to have their friends, like even just hanging out, or like, Hayes has a bunch of friends, and it's almost like somebody said, one of the friends said to me once, it's like a Disney movie. And I'm like, it's certainly not really like a Disney show or whatever. But I think because there's a lot of hustle and bustle, other kids are more intrigued. So it is more norm for mine. The girls, Delaney especially, since she just, they've been back from college and lived on their own and been independent, I see them getting a little more annoyed with the chaos that they're not used to because they've been removed from it. And, while you're living in an apartment with one roommate and 2 bathrooms, and there is a feeling of, so I think it's normal until they are removed from it, and then they come back in. This is
I forgot what this was like.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that, and tolerance levels are different for all of them also,
So is the house to hang out at, since, the more the merrier, or do the kids like to go other places to just have time away from their
So it definitely varies. We are definitely the house with the hustle and bustle and the food. Like I'm morphing a little bit into that boy mom mode where a lot of the chaos just continues and trickles out. Scott likes to have his buddies over in the backyard and just like eat and hang out. And my two little guys just, there's a lot of sleepovers too. My younger ones love when they're, and I don't even notice. It's sort of like, okay, we can have 3 or 4 more. It's fine. The girls would always have their friends here, but now they're getting older. That everyone just wants to get out, and I think it's the dynamic of they're older and more mature, and now the boys are kind of annoying that they're around and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like every question I'm answering with it's changing, but it is.
Sure, if that's normal. I'm curious because I know with my three, and Carrie, you probably see this also, personalities. Like I see they're all very different, but yet there are common threads that I would say run through all of my children. How do you see that with their personalities?
I think the personalities, I think one of the characteristics I see that I do love in all of them is a kindness and an empathy to some degree. I feel like they are more cognizant of other people. That doesn't mean they're great people, and that means they're not, but I feel like they're more aware of other because they're with other personalities all the time. Does that make sense? Like they're able to interact with the quiet one or the bossy one, the one that has ADHD that's running around and leaving every single door open and cabinet, and you just kind of like they're able to acclimate. I think it's not really a personality trait. I think that's more of just a learned characteristic maybe that they have.
Right. Tolerance.
They have tolerance. That's a good word. Yes, absolutely. Tolerance of other people. But personality, ingrained in them, I feel like they're all so different. I'm not sure if I could pinpoint what, I think it's more of a learned thing than it's neat how they're all different, but I don't know that I could pinpoint one specific. It'll probably come to me later and I'll
Okay.
I'll think about it.
Is there any advice you have after all of your years of parenting? Anything any words of wisdom that you would give to a mom of many children, a mom of one child, whatever it is? I mean, you've had so much experience.
I always think about, the little old lady in the grocery store that says, enjoy over every single moment because it's going to go really fast. And you sort of are like, yeah, sure. But she's right. It goes really, really fast. And just embrace the moments, embrace the chaos, even the wild moments, even the sad moments. I think they become memories that you grow from and they grow from and they look back upon. The stories, the bonding that they have, there's a lot of things that happens in each family, and just taking those situations and growing, especially with a larger group that they have, just knowing that they always have each other. And I don't know, my words of advice would be just enjoy, and patience. Patience. And this is actually a friend of mine told me this years ago, and I loved her for it. And she said, everything's a phase. It's always a phase. Like you will get past that not sleeping through the night phase, and you will get past that tantrum phase, and you will get past, everything will end at some point in time. So the good, the bad, the ugly will stop. So it's just part of the road that we have to take, but just enjoy it all.
Did it ever feel like chaos to you, or did it feel like your norm? Like, were there ever moments where you were like, what am I doing?
What did I do?
This is crazy. I cannot,
I can't handle this.
Right.
I can't do this.
Right. So I think there were definitely moments like when you had to run out the door and like, one of them didn't have their shoes on and one of them didn't have this on and one of them. My moments of chaos, actually, this is going to sound really crazy, is, my husband and I are very different. My patience level is like weirdly, oddly different. And my husband's is not. Like that would always stress me out. Like when we were like preparing to do something and maybe one of them would run amok or one of them would have like, I've always been very tolerant of like, oh, have your shoes on. Like we'll just
no big deal. Right.
Where Rich would be like, oh my God, they have no shoes on. I'm like, babe, it's not a big deal. Like they're going to be okay. Like they're going to be fine. So those have been my moments of tension, is just trying to get him to embrace that. And I know it was my day and I was probably in survival mode a lot of it, if you think about it. we had to get there. And whether this one had a dirty shirt or couldn't make it or whatever, we just had to go with it. So I think my moments of frustration were definitely, those moments where stuff that I thought was very tolerable would sort of be like a big deal to someone that maybe wasn't around it all the time. And that could be in a store or, someone else that maybe had one or I don't know, that kind of stuff. I think that's when I was like, oh, it's
The one thing that has always struck me about you is your ability to remain even keeled. And I'm just curious, is there anything that's ever flustered you? Like, is there ever a time when you're like, where did you just like, oh my God? Is there, because I've never seen it.
oh my God.
Never seen it.
So I was going to mention the story before. I think the toughest time in my life was probably during a campaign. Honestly, that's when I got flustered a little. I'm going to be honest. Like that's when I had to walk away from things. When people were making digs at, this is just one relation to about the concept about us having so many kids. And I may or may not have told you this story, Jessica, but this was a moment where I was flabbergasted and I had to remove myself from a situation because I was like, what in the but we were campaigning. We had a picture of all our 5 kids, and somebody came up to me, an older guy, and said, "Oh, you have 5 kids." And I was like, "Yeah, we do," because that's really always I still sometimes can't believe it. Like, honestly, I look back at, 28, 29-year-old me. I'm like, "Oh my God, we did this." And the man point blank looked at me and said, "You never did learn to keep your legs closed." And I was like, "Oh my God, Rich?"
Oh, wow.
And Rich was like, "Oh."
Oh
And
my God.
I handed him the flyer and I'm like, "I have to go home. I cannot do this. Like, I cannot do this." So I would say that would be a moment when I was just, just something that just what people I guess also too, when you put yourself out there, you're kind of like, okay, it's okay to, like people, I'm not a celebrity, but people look at celebrities and they're like, well, they asked for it. They were out in public and da, da, da. But that was a moment when I was very flustered and I just couldn't.
That
But you
is
knew, yeah, but you
awful.
knew how to, like,
I just
I
laughed.
know a million people would have just attacked it, like, given it
Yeah.
right back to him, but you were able to
Yeah.
stay calm even though you weren't in your head, right, and leave, right?
So I was talking about being flustered with your family, but the fact that being flustered comes from an outside source like that, I mean, how horrible.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do get flustered. I do.
But I think Carrie had asked, I don't know if it picked up, but did Rich have any reaction to that man?
I think he was just as flabbergasted, and I also feel like he was almost had, like, reservations about maybe how I was going to react, and when I left, I know that he was kind of relieved because maybe not knowing what was gonna come out of my mouth or whatever. It was new territory for us both, of course. The funny part of the story is that this gentleman came back out afterwards and said, "Well, clearly your wife thinks you're a great guy, so I voted for you." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't, like, this doesn't stop. This is just not." But so I get frustrated with stuff like that, but not
Understandably so.
yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, life-wise, in terms of the kids, this is gonna sound strange, and it's almost like it may sound like a little to me, it was like a dream to just come true to have these kids. Like, this is what I wanted. I loved working. I went to school. But I wanted to always stay home with my kids. And for me, even on the craziest of days, I'll yell sometimes and yeah, I get aggravated, but I just feel like this is where I was meant to be. And it's just, I like it. Even in the craziness of it, I like it a
I
lot.
love that.
Which is an awesome message for all of us as parents, right? And a reminder that we have today. We should appreciate what we have and the children that we have, whether they're healthy or not, or come with challenges, or they're easy, or we only have one, or we have 18. It's just such a blessing. And I loved, like, talking to you today just to hear, like, how right your dreams have come true, and you've been able to shed light on how large families are just such a pleasure, right? And how you're exemplary of being able to be a mom and be in chaos and still be in the community and just really enjoying it. Really enjoying it, I think, is a good reminder, because I will say, even with two, like, sometimes I get bogged down and I forget. So thank you for the reminder.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You shared so many things that I did not know about you, and I really just enjoyed our time together. I just have one closing question. I don't even know if you've given this any thought, but is there anything next for you that you would like to do once you have some more free time?
Okay, so I love being in the classroom and I love being there for extended times, weeks. Like I love those long-term assignments because I love to connect with the kids. I love to have that moment, not just sort of be babysitting for the day. I realize that I don't like the administrative, dealing with all the
Yeah.
other components of it. I just get to go in and just enjoy. And I feel like I honestly just foresee, Rich and I having time to do things together. I'm not so much me, but grandbabies. My kids become yeah, like 21 years old is the oldest. But I've been trying, and Jessica and Lonnie have both caught me. I've been trying to focus on my own Zen and some Pilates and some yoga and some bar, and making sure that I'm healthy so I can stay in a good, physical and mental mindset for my. So I don't know. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm kind of like happy with where I am in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And that is okay
Yes,
to not know.
100%.
But you guys are amazing because you're doing this. Like, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe I'll write a book. I don't know.
Well, Catherine, whatever you're doing something really, really right. So keep it up. Thank you for visiting with us today and chatting with us. It's been really our pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for inviting me. It was an honor. Thank you.
So thank you for listening today. And remember, listen, like, and share with a friend. Have a good day. Thank you for listening to this episode of Parent Coaches Unleashed with Carrie and Jessica. Together, we can raise the next generation of independent, capable, and compassionate young adults.
We encourage you to send us an email with questions and feedback to info@parentcoachesunleashed.com. Please remember, you are not alone on this parenting journey.